that idea of status quo, that we can't be comfortable with remaining status quo, that my expertise in my classroom is enough. That's all I need. I don't need to be able to reach out to my colleagues because I've got what I need. So I'd love for you to be able to comment on how do we engage collaboration to fight against that idea of status quo?
Oh, I think that's such a great question. I'm gonna just jump right in because I am, but in my job, I have to be very evidence-based, like and data-driven and work in a data-driven culture. And I think people are just so unaware of like the statistics, just using literacy as an example, of how people are growing up and how they mature into adults, and just statistically where their reading level lies as an adult. And I think it's really important to confront the statistics that we see in schools and address that status quo question with some genuine data that's sometimes shocking. And I think whenever I'm working with schools, I'll do a data story about, like, what does the data look like for a first grader? What does it look like for a fifth grader, an eighth grader, a high school student? And what's happening in that school? Like, what's the data story tell you? And really working from a place of really good information to say, we don't want this. Things have to change. I mean, we can't be satisfied with, 50% of our population in the United States reading at or below a sixth grade reading level. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm kind of making that statistic up. Maybe it's accurate. It's close to accurate. I think, actually, I do think
Close for sure. Yeah.
but or if we're graduating our seniors at an eighth grade reading level, well, we're saying that they're earning a high school diploma with an eighth grade reading. That doesn't work. Like, that's not a graduating senior. And I think that confronts the status quo. It says we have to get better. Like, I think there has to be a bold, and Jeanne used the word brave, conversation. And I think it has to be brave. I think we have to confront this. And it really does have a lifelong effect on people. And I think if we stay with the status quo, it inhibits students to grow up to their incredible potentials. It shuts doors on students into their futures instead of keeping doors open to them.
I want to just reference, before we hear from Jeanne, the idea of it's really hard to have that conversation without data. And we saw the same thing in our school. When we could, without the data, it's, yeah, we're doing pretty good. Our kids seem to be doing well. Everyone seems to be happy. But then when we could surface, actually the data shows 55% of our students are reading below their grade level. Well, first it started a question of, well, that test, there must be something wrong. Are we using the right tool, the right test, before we could get to so what do we do? What's our next step?
What's our response?
The data is so critically important for that, to help inform and drive that conversation.
It gives the impetus for change.
Yeah.
That's why question number 2 is so important, is it keeps that formative data in front of teachers all the time and collaborating, again, in the present tense about their students to grow. Sorry, Jeanne, if I cut you off.
No, that's okay. I was thinking about the fact that when we don't have data in front of us, it's really easy to stay in the status quo.
Sure.
Kind of likening it to, like, if you don't ever get on the scale, you kind of just keep doing what you've always done, right? Until you kind of have to face that brutal reality. But what I've found, interestingly, is that sometimes that doesn't even compel people to really have a sense of urgency. It's kind of like, well, that's kind of what it is. And so I feel like really fostering the ability of leaders, and I'm talking about team leaders, teacher leaders, part of your guiding coalition, to really be the ones who daily at their team meetings are bringing those conversations to the table, that it isn't just formal leadership that's doing that. I think there has to be conversations that are ongoing around, are we okay with this? Right? When it's a colleague to colleague conversation, I think that is a little bit different than the administrator sitting in the room saying, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. How come you guys are? So I think it's that we have to build that capacity of our educators to start asking each other those types of questions as well. So I think it's a combination of formal and informal leaders doing that. But I do think there has to be that piece that we consider. How are we fostering the ability for teams to have those conversations all the time, as opposed to just at a staff meeting, when I present information as a principal. So yeah, that's important.